All right, we are back. It's Browns Live Training Camp presented by Cross Country Mortgage. Look at the fans in attendance. It feels real. It gives you that energy. Nathan Zegura alongside Ken Carman. And right now, Ken, it's time for us to do our Browns roster battle presented by Discount Drug Mart. And today we're going to focus on the linebackers. And that's a position group that I think is really interesting because not only are guys competing to make this roster, they're competing to get on the field.
We went from a position group that was open, just wide open, to now with the change in defense, now it's a very difficult argument about who's going to make this team and who's not. I mean, if you're looking at this defense, you and I have been discussing throughout the spring about where they're going to be because Joe Woods, now you opened my eyes to this, and I don't mean to go too far in the weeds. You opened my eyes to this during the draft. You said Joe Woods wanted to run over 400 snaps a dime defense in 2020. Right. How many snaps did he run in 2020 in dime?
16
snaps in dime. So when we talk about Joe Woods and we talk about this defense, I think it's even more amazing. You go 11-5 and you go as far as you did where really you're playing defense with one hand tied behind your back. Now you bring in defensive players that you got out of the draft. You get a couple of linebackers in there. Anthony Walker, we already talked about him and the type of leadership that he brings to this. I'm guessing about 6, like you and might have said. I think that I'll stay right there with that because special teams is a big issue. And I think that part of the athleticism here that's changing here is before, all right, defensive backs, wide receivers because of special teams. Now, if you got guys who are good in coverage as far as linebackers, maybe you want to use them in special teams, Nathan.
Yeah, and those are the guys you're going to see on the field more often. Look, let's be honest about it. The base defense in the NFL is now nickel. That means you're going to see 2 linebackers on the field in dime, and the Browns can do a variety of dimes. They can do 3 safeties, 3 corners, 4 corners, 2 safeties. That could be 1 linebacker on the field. Of course, the traditional base defense, as you see Mack Wilson there, would be 3 linebackers on the field. So 6. Let's work with that number.
Yeah.
Anthony Walker Jr. is here. We heard John Johnson III earlier this week talking his availability about how Anthony Walker Jr. is going to be calling this defense for the team. So he's your likely starter at Mike linebacker. And this is a guy who in that role is a full-time every down linebacker for the Colts, averaged 107 tackles over the last 3 seasons. And we know what he meant there. Just listen to what Darius Leonard had to say about him on his way out the door. And then you're talking about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's not out there as we look at linebacker coach Jason Tarver, who's got a real competitive room. Owusu-Koramoah, many think the steal of the draft, falls to the 2nd round. The Browns come up, they get him. He is athletic. He can cover as well. And Owusu-Koramoah, though, right now not practicing on that COVID list. And then you got that trio of guys who have been around. We all know the names. Mack Wilson, Taki, who had a great year last year. Jacob Phillips, who's a name you hear when people say, who's going to take a leap for you? The veteran Malcolm Smith. Elijah Lee, who led your team in special teams tackles a year ago. We've just given you 7 names. These are going to be tough decisions, not to mention Tony Fields, your draft pick out of West Virginia.
Oh, my goodness, because I was thinking about it. I was like, well, you know, I can see maybe where Mack Wilson's going to have a tough time.
He's had a great offseason.
He's had a great offseason. I think he showed up and played decently. Could talk a little bit about him in the future. But one guy that I think has been fantastic so far, and I know he ended up getting a tip pick yesterday, but I have to highlight him, and I know he's a favorite of yours, is Elijah Lee. And I know he might be, if you look at where the depth chart was previously for last year, you go, well, where is he going to be in 2021? He has had a very nice start to camp. Now, we'll see what happens when they put on pads, but this has all of a sudden become a tough decision to make. If you're looking at 6, maybe 7, I think it's like 6 when it comes to linebacker spot. This is really tough because Mack Wilson has had a very nice offseason, and now you got to pay attention to Elijah Lee and your rookie in Tony Fields.
Yeah, and Tony Fields battling a foot injury, not out there as the Browns back now in 11-on-11 action. We're going to bring that to you here on Browns Live Training Camp presented by Cross Country Mortgage. Sione Taki. Last year, Pro Football Focus's number 2 graded run linebacker in the league, 13th overall, and showed improvement in coverage. And you saw that right there. That'd be a minimal gain on the flare out to Andy Janovich. Had that pick 6 against the Philadelphia Eagles when he was the captain in that game, and also pick in the playoff win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. But you mentioned Elijah Lee, and I think that's an interesting one. A lot of guys that were our core special teams players last year have departed this offseason. Yeah. Think of Tavier Thomas, Tay Davis, a couple of them. Elijah Lee is probably Mike Prefer's most trusted, most reliable special teams guy. Led the team in special teams tackles a year ago with 8. And so if he makes the team, it might not even be to play linebacker per se as much as it is to be on special teams. As Demetric Felton gets the hand, you see the little shiftiness that he's got there, those jump cuts. And it always looks, a jump cut running back in number 25 always looks good, Ken.
I'm going to need to see some wide shots of the offensive lineman. You know that. But you go back to Elijah Lee. All right, if we're going to talk special teams with him, and I know we got a lot of time to pound this out, then where does Mack Wilson fit? because I think he gets to the spot as quick as anybody that you could find. And I loved him coming out of Alabama, but can you wrap? Can you defend? Can you do those things? Because you went out and got Anthony Walker Jr. for a reason. Sione Takitaki, I didn't know what type of second year he was going to have. And he ended up being fantastic down the stretch for this defense. He was a pleasant surprise. In finding out, because last year I thought defensively it was going to be, all right, who's part of the future? I didn't know they'd go as far as they did last year. Who's part of the future on this defense? And then let's get the offense going in the right direction. And then Sione Takitaki shows up, and now he makes things nice for Browns fans, but very difficult for the rest of the linebacker room.
Hey, you see right there, Kareem Hunt struggling to find a little running room. Again, the pads aren't on. It's hard to tell what's going on in the trenches. That's what you want to see. And we'll see that on Tuesday, and we'll be back for Browns Live on that Tuesday. So be sure to tune in for that one when the pads come on. That'll be the first padded practice of the season. But you mentioned Mack Wilson. And Mack Wilson's a guy that I think a lot of our fans, a lot of people maybe written off in this offseason when they saw the moves to bring in an Anthony Walker Jr. and a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And Mack has taken this offseason as seriously as anybody. His body is in the best shape he's ever been in. He is playing faster, and he's playing smarter. He's thrown himself into this playbook. He has worked extensively with linebacker coach Jason Tarver. He's attached himself to the hip of Anthony Walker Jr., and they are thrilled. If you were to say one of the guys that has helped themselves the most early in this offseason as Baker hits Jarvis Landry for a nice little catch and run game there in the 11-on-11 period. Mack Wilson on the defensive side of the ball has probably helped himself as much as anybody on this roster, Ken.
Mack's a kid who, in my business, what we do interviews. Mack's a kid that you just end up liking immediately.
That's right.
He's good for interviews. He's always got a smile. He's always willing to tell you, not about state secrets, but he's willing to give you a little bit of background there. So he's a guy that I gravitate towards and I like, but it's a big camp for him. I mean, he was at the start of his career, you're looking at a fifth-round guy out of Alabama that some people are saying, tweeners, they don't know necessarily where to put this kid. And then I thought he went out there, played with his head on fire, but made several mistakes. But Sione Takitaki, going back to him with how well he played, now fans are looking, all right, again, you can get to the spot. I see your helmet. I see your number. Can you come up with the stop to get them back off the field? So to say it's a big preseason for him is an understatement. It's just, how do you fit within this defense? Because I know you have the physical capability to do so. It's, can you follow along with what Joe Woods is trying to do?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a big camp for all these linebackers. This is a position you don't want to take a day off. And I know Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah wishes he was out here. The team wishes that he was out here, but he's staying very involved in the meetings because how you fit into this defense, first and foremost, is going to be how can you cover? How can you play in space? Because this is a team, look, we expect to be ahead. The changes that were made to this defense were to get pass rushers up front. It was to get better on the back end and to get linebackers that can run. As we see Case Keenum, a little play action and throws one out there. And there's A.J. Green again. A.J. Green having a nice start to his camp yesterday. Came up with the tip ball that led to your Elijah Lee interception you referenced earlier. That's another PBU for him. And A.J. Green was a guy that was the top paid undrafted free agent in the NFL a year ago. The Browns really like the young man out of Oklahoma State, and he's competing now to be one of those backups on the outside. As you see number 59, Curtis Weaver, right next to him, who had a nice day yesterday as well. Some of these young players starting to make some plays in this Joe Woods defense.
You're loving these DBs, and I can tell why. And when you go back to A.J. Green, it's an easy name to remember. It's how's he going to fit inside, outside, and where are you going to put him at? Again, a special teams type of thought maybe you have with him. We'll see where he can end up on that side.
Yeah, you've got to. And as you talk about these linebackers, again, just kind of tie a bow on this. Jacob Phillips, second-year player, was a third-round pick a year ago. Has to start week 17 at the Mike linebacker, make all the calls for the defense, racks up double-digit tackles in the game that sends the Browns ultimately to the playoffs with that victory over the Steelers. And internally, that's a guy that they say, we think he's going to make a big leap. He's added a lot of bulk to his body. He can cover and play in space. He's long and he's lean. He runs very well. You see Baker Mayfield there in the huddle as they come out now with the ones back in this 11-on-11 period. And in case you're wondering, no Miles today. He is down today, just kind of getting a veteran day off, as well as Tack McKinley, who was out here earlier and again keeps making plays off the edge, but looks like he might not be able to finish practice for the second consecutive day as he's battling an illness that knocked him out yesterday. So you're seeing Clowney out there, and we haven't even talked about Jadeveon Clowney.
We haven't mentioned his name once.
Oh my goodness, and he's had a nice camp,
yes,
just in the backfield, and he's a guy. You see Jacob Phillips as well. He's a guy that the Browns are counting on, A, to really help this run defense, but B, to help get after the quarterback. That's what we were talking about. A defense built to protect leads and be aggressive and make plays. When you have pressure from Miles and Clowney and McKinley and Malik Jackson, that means the ball's got to come out quicker. Your DBs can play tighter. Your linebackers and safeties, we've already seen John Johnson get 1 interception today, can go ahead and jump, be a little more aggressive, and come up with the football.
What Jadeveon Clowney brings to this, and we're seeing Andrew Billings right there, who I just love Andrew Billings just because of the size and the footwork and everything.
The girth of that man, Ken.
I ain't gonna lie. We were watching him the other day, and I'm like, if he were 6'6", he'd be Ted Washington, and I see him there at 6'1", and he just moves like a cat. Already is a guy that I love. But going back to Jadeveon there, this is a guy who has been, I think, maligned by the media his entire career because what he's done has never been enough for guys like me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we're always coming up with hot takes. Ever since the hit against Michigan in the Outback Bowl, it's always been what's next. And you see what he was able to do at Houston, what he was able to do in Seattle within stopping the run. If he doesn't get hurt in Tennessee, he's not a part of this Browns football team. But you still have a guy now who is, during his career, has learned not just to pass rush, but to make himself viable in stopping the run, being able to play inside as well as outside and still retaining some of that quickness to do so.
Yeah, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch because he's going to be opposite Miles. He's going to sometimes be inside next to Miles. And right there, what you saw was a tight end screen to Harrison Bryant. And the Browns want to incorporate more screens, I think, into their offense. If you think about the second half of last year, it was a screen on 3rd down to ice the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars and secure your win. It was a screen to Nick Chubb for 40 yards and a touchdown that really kind of put the nail in the coffin against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But what I noticed on that one, and what you're going to see a lot when you come out here, when you watch Browns live training camp as well, it's the closing speed. It looked for a second like Harrison Bryant had some room, and then all of a sudden the defense is flying in as you see Troy Hill fly from his cornerback spot right in there. Great shot. Great work by our camera guys there with Odell Beckham Jr. in the background. Troy Hill, the Youngstown native, making big plays, coming in. He's likely to be the starting slot corner for your Browns. And as you see Jeff Howard, the DB coach there, excited. One of the things they liked about him and all these DBs, they're not afraid to come up in run support.
Troy Hill, the first thing I'm going to ask him when I interview him is if he's going to be a hot dog shop guy or a jib jab guy or a Jays guy. We know John Greco loves Jays out there in Youngstown. It's a great triumvirate of big fighting when it comes to some of those hot dog shops. But in all seriousness, and how this defense runs, you know, one of the things that I think that we have to pay attention to in years past, the defense has been ahead of the offense in a lot of ways because we've had new quarterbacks, we've had new offensive linemen, we've had new head coaches who have had an offensive philosophy. There's been a difference. Now we see how this is Jacob Phillips shows up big.
How about that's Jacob Phillips in coverage on a wide receiver step for step right there. And those are the kind of plays that are going to resonate with Joe Woods and Jason Tarver. That's how you get on the field right there. Show you can cover.